beforehand. So she has worked for 10 years in human development, capacity building, and democratization. In 2006, she was nominated by the UN as the Youth Delegate to Libya for the Millennium Development Goals. She pursued a coaching approach to human development through the private sector before deciding to establish Inara, which is an executive coaching and leadership development company. In 2009, and 2 years later, she took part in the Libyan Uprisings and subsequently founded the new Libya Foundation, the NLF, in order to help build Libya's new civil society. She's a Bachelor of Arts in Psychology from Marymount University and was awarded a Public Service Fellowship at the Harvard Kennedy School of Government. She's currently pursuing a mid-career Master's in Public Administration, and she's an Edward S. Mason Fellow, which means she's a really big deal. Rihab was raised in Tripoli, Ethiopia, until her family relocated to the US when she was 10 years old. In 2013, she was awarded the Desmond Tutu African Leadership Fellowship, and is currently committed to strengthening Libya's economic and cultural ties to the region. So without further ado, Rihab Elhaj.
Wow. Thank you. Is this on? Can you hear me? It's like that awkward moment when you don't know when the person, who the person is introducing. It sounds fabulous. Thank you, Khalid. I want to take a moment to just ask for a round of applause for Ayam Esjoub and Cami Choi, who have been planning this conference probably since June at about probably 40, 60, 80 hours a week. So thank you so much. You've done a fantastic job. Really young and amazing girls. When Khalid asked me to speak about Libya, I kind of prepared a very rigorous report with a lot of data on what's happening and the actions. But he asked me to tell you a story about why I went back to Libya in 2009 and why I plan to go back after graduation. And so I guess the question is, what is there to go back to? We have 4 failed states and just as many civil wars. We have probably the slowest growing economy in the world, the highest youth unemployment rates. We have low human rights, no freedoms, probably no women's rights. It's not going very well. So you may think anybody who is dedicating their life to something like that is probably pretty crazy. But I just realized that crazy here is in really good company because I was looking at what you all came here to do for the next 3 days, and it's activism and reconstruction, media changing narratives, diplomacy and negotiation, humanitarian work, changing the perspectives, challenges and achievements. So there seems to be a lot of hope. Maybe we're wrong, maybe we got it wrong, but this year we had the highest ticket sales in the history of the event, so I actually presume there is a lot of hope still. So why are we here, despite all odds working against us? I'd like to tell you why I'm here, which is basically comes down to one thing, and that's hope. I was spent from year 4 to about 9 years in Libya, and Libya was a very strange place. I remember a very strange place where salt water came out of the tap. So nothing could grow. There was absolutely nothing green. We'd wait in line for things like bread and olive oil, like every day. I remember there were hangings on television every other day, and there'd be little children hanging out underneath the feet of the person who was hung. I remember everything outside the fence of our home was dangerous, but everything inside was absolutely wonderful. And we moved to the United States when I was 9, but my mom used to take us back to Libya every summer. So the regime was this really big fixture in our life, and it was almost, Gaddafi was kind of like half myth, and he was immortal. And if he died, he had 5 sons who were going to take his place. So when I was asked to be the UN Youth Delegate to Libya for the Millennium Development Goals, I thought, of course, this is an impossible task, but it's a free trip to New York, so I'm going to go. And in the second night, I remember they brought us all into the General Assembly. And Ban KiMoon spoke to us, and at the time he was a South Korean representative to the UN. And he stood behind that green podium, and he must have seen the disbelief in our faces, like, what are we supposed to do? And he said, young people, you need to know that when you work to serve and benefit yourself, God and the universe will give you enough for yourself. But when you work for and you work to benefit and serve the world, God and the universe will give you enough to serve the world. And so I thought this is an interesting principle, that faith is actually used to serve people. So I thought I'd give it a chance. I went back home to Libya, and we did try to implement the Millennium Development Goals and build some civil society capacity. But again, everything that the regime was doing was working completely against us. They were not interested in any type of civic engagement. So I worked through the private sector on executive coaching workshops, and for about a year and a half trying to get that up and going. And then the uprisings happened. So I happened to be kind of perfect. I'd studied psychology and coaching and already doing capacity building. So we seized the opportunity along with hundreds of thousands of other Libyans. And there was an incident that really did test my faith, which I would like to tell you a little bit more about. And that was that during the uprisings, we heard of a lot of rapes happening. And I know I'm losing time, so sorry. A lot of rapes were happening, and we saw videos on Facebook of women being raped in front of their families. And it was really devastating. And we knew that these women would not come forward for help because it is such a stigma in Libya. And we had heard numbers in the hundreds and the thousands, and we didn't know what was going on. These were the soldiers that were doing these rapes. So a group of Libyan American women and myself decided to investigate what's going on and try to see if we can help these women that showed up at the Tunisian border. So I went first, and it became evident really quickly that I did a tour kind of Tunisia and the camps. These women were not coming forward, according to the UN and other aid agencies. They really have not been coming forward. And also in visiting the camps, it was clear that the humanitarian situation was really deteriorating. You had a lot of women and youth who had been living in the desert in a tent for months on end, and obviously suffering from PTSD. They had lost a lot of family. So I began a proposal to open a psychosocial service center for women and children to kind of meet both of those needs. And I wrote the proposal and I started doing the fundraising. And about that time, I was able to contact the women in the US, and it had been a while, and I hadn't been able to tell them what I was doing. So when I told them what we were doing with the proposal, they were really quite upset. They felt that I was moving forward without their consent, and that I wasn't necessarily doing the right thing, and so they pulled out of the project. And I was kind of really suddenly very aware of my surroundings in that moment in time. I was in a hotel in a small town in Tunisia, in Tataouine. I was in this lobby. It was after midnight, and it was a smoke-filled lobby, and I was surrounded by these men, like refugees and spies and aid workers. And I had gotten a spider bite on my leg, and it was swollen. 30 seconds left. Oh my gosh. Keep going. Okay, thanks, Khaled. And I was just remember feeling like I was a billion miles away from home, and I had never written a proposal before for an aid project. I had never started an aid project, and I just thought, what the hell am I doing here? Like, did I really let faith and passion for mankind bring me here? And it was a moment, and I went back into my room and I started praying. So I said, God, if I can do something here for somebody, I need help, but otherwise I'm going to go home. So I spent a couple of days writing budgets and writing job descriptions and just things that like I didn't know about. Met dozens of donors, dozens more turned me down, and I decided to go home. And the next day, I got an email with a transfer receipt for $10,000 from Ghana. And a couple of hours later, I got another transfer receipt for $10,000 from Malta, and another one from Lebanon, $3,000 within the same day. So I was like, oh my God. Okay, you answered my prayer late, but it's here. So I was just elated. And so I decided to go back, and within a couple of days, the city of Tataouine decided to donate their grade school as a facility for us to open the center. And within a week, we had 7 to 8 volunteers. We had a couple of people with buses volunteer to bring people over from the refugee camp. And we turned that school into the Hanana Center for Women and Children, which ran for 6 weeks until the uprisings ended. I think the Arab uprisings were an incredibly hopeful moment for us and for our generation. They were the first things to change a narrative that we were actually raised with. But we look at circumstances today and it's pretty hopeless. It's really hard to see through terrorism and tyranny and these circumstances and have hope. But I want to say that the waves of the uprisings actually have gone a lot farther and a lot deeper than the naked eye can see. And that is why I have more faith than ever. Because when I went back to Libya and I founded the New Libya Foundation and we were doing our civil society capacity building programs, one of the first programs we started was Leadership in Civil Society, where we brought 15 young people and we trained them over a period of 6 months and built their capacity as they started their own venture. And today Omnia has a IT training company called Nazada, and they train young men to code. And Musaddaq is a lead negotiator in the South, and he helps resolve conflict in the South, and he's actually recently got accepted into Georgetown for diplomacy, and he wishes to go back in 2 years. Naima opened a center for autistic children to build their capacity and their parents. And Umar, who lost a leg during the uprising, became a health guru, and he got the first legislation passed to stop smoking in public places. And that was just our first program. And we did 3 leadership and civil society programs. We ran 300 events, and we trained over 3,000 activists and helped launch over 67 civil society organizations. And every single person that we worked with has gone home and impacted hundreds of more people in their community. And today, there are millions of people like Omnia and like Musaddaq and like Naima and Omar. And maybe that should be our leap of faith. Do I have faith in God? Absolutely, I do. But what I'm talking to you about today is my faith in people. And that is why I'm going back. So I hope the stories of these people can be a leap of faith from intention in these halls to action back home. And it's not a blind leap, not at all. It's just seeing things that have been there all along. Thank you.
Just a big thank you to Rihab for that beautiful story. I was really, really touched by that. We did go a little bit long, so we're going to skip the Q&A. And I think that if there are questions that you're going to have for the speakers, they'll be around afterwards. They're around for the rest of the conference, so you can hunt them down, and you can find them either here or in Libya. Thank you, Rihab.